All right, welcome to the Hard Lessons podcast. Thanks for coming on here, Cam. I'll give you a super quick intro, a little bit about yourself, then I'll want to hear a little bit from you. So we have Cam here today. He's a very special guest joining us. I'd love you to share a little bit about your journey. Overcoming obstacles, achieving peak performance is really your focus, what it sounds like these days. Cam has a very unique story to tell. After years of battling with his own health energy challenge, he's developed a bulletproof protocol to help others, entrepreneurial men, really tap into his program and systems he's built. In this episode, I'd like to dive super deep into your journey, explore your struggles and how others can relate to that and learn from what you've done. Conquering afternoon crashes, brain fog, or just a few of the things that we'll talk about here. You have invaluable insights on all these topics, business related. So if you're ready, I'd love to clarify, gain focus and gain energy among our audience. I think it'd be a super cool podcast to tap into that side of the business things. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, brother.
Awesome. So to start off, share a little bit, paint us the picture. Come from, what you do, your upbringing, and where you at now.
Yeah, definitely. So pretty much for the sake of this podcast, the important thing is that I was a skinny kid growing up constantly. So I just had a tough time putting on muscle. And in doing so, kind of led to me not feeling super confident in my body. And I was 6 foot, 150 pounds, really just didn't have a lot of confidence in who I was physically. And that was kind of like mimicked through the people around me, my friends, my family. And that started to build a void in who I was around, hey, I don't really like what I'm seeing and what the outside world is reflecting. And so I eventually jumped into working out. That led me down, now a 10-year journey on everything to do with health. But with that, I learned so much that went outside of my body. We've been talking about that over the weekend. And that then led me to this bigger idea of like, hey, you know what? I've learned so much about myself, went from 150 pounds, shy, skinny, to 200 pounds, confident and shredded for myself. And I also see all of the benefits that come with just taking your energy to the next level and prioritizing that as an entrepreneur. Now I run my own business, and that's been invaluable to me to have my health, have my energy, be able to focus, especially in the startup stages. And so I saw that, and I wanted to really take that protocol that I've developed for myself and how can I replicate that into other men, and then specifically entrepreneurs that have also, sure, they've had some success, but now they're kind of battling that energy, that afternoon crash that typically comes with, poor diet, lack of sleep, poor stress management. And in doing so, I've really started to hone in on how I can help busy entrepreneurs, men that, just really can't get a hold of themselves when it comes to their energy, their health as a whole, and starting to turn that around and again, allowing them to step into that better version of themselves, right? Realize their full potential. Because I genuinely think, whether it be in business, life, relationships, etc., you can't access the best version of yourself without having a strong emphasis on your health. So over the last 10 years, I've done a ton of self-learning, ton of mistakes, and we've gotten to where we are today with Above Men. Been doing that for about 15 months now. Helping primarily entrepreneurial men really master their energy as step one. And it's going really, really well so far. So
that's awesome. And it sounds like it really started just yourself. You had a lack of confidence and wanted to improve yourself. And now you're taking everything you've learned and helping others who are very much in need of it. You see entrepreneurs burn out and not taking care of themselves, too focused on their business. So I feel that's super cool. So what were a few of the biggest challenges or hard knocks throughout the process of learning and self-teaching? It sounds like your 10-year process until now.
Specifically around my health or the business?
A little bit of both, because your business is the health. What more specifically what you teach, the well-being, the health, the mindset stuff?
Yeah, I would say it would start with nutrition. Like, nutrition is just such a hard thing to grasp. But then once you're on the other side of it, it actually becomes really simple, especially in today's world. Like, it's just so chaotic around what to eat, what not to eat. Everyone has different opinions. And then, specifically as a man, if you're trying to gain weight, specifically muscle, not gain, when am I supposed to eat? How do I fit it in within a busy schedule? Especially if you're talking within the lens of an entrepreneur, that can be difficult and it can be very overwhelming. And then you got to make the food all the time and yada, yada, yada. And so it was really figuring out how do you build a consistent system that really makes sense for your life consistently and something that you can actually adhere to. So I went through the ups and downs on that. First started with just like trying to eat more food, being a skinnier guy. That was just step one. It was just like eating more food, eating more protein. Then once I got there, I realized I was actually eating more food, but just the wrong food. And then I kind of, had these lulls in my energy. Really wasn't to show up at the time in my current role when I was doing door-to-door sales. And so then I need to figure things out again. Okay, how do I eat more food, but then also it be high quality where I actually have the energy levels? And then how do I do it consistently, right? As I get more busier, how do I rely on some sort of system that is going to keep me consistent when, I have a full day of work every single day instead of just kind of spending 3-4 hours a day allotted to food. Like most guys just don't have that luxury, nor should you need to allot that much time to food because you really don't when you have the right systems. So food's number one. And it's just knowing what to eat. And then the other big thing is mindset and without seeing some sort of food ad, et cetera, right? And so the mindset piece and the habits underneath your nutrition actually become the most important piece because I can give you the meal plan, but ultimately, if you don't have the habits and the discipline to adhere to the meal plan, it doesn't matter if you have a meal plan or not.
So how have you done that with working with very, very, very busy entrepreneurs and business owners? Because that's my biggest struggle. I just don't eat because I'm so busy. Like, how have you simplified it and dummied it down so much? Because guys can turn into these chefs and it's a full-time job. And just trying to eat properly and get dialed in. Like, how have you done it? And what have you seen worked from the nutrition side of it?
Yeah, so I kind of coined this term called OSOM, and it stands for one set of meals. And basically, we've been sold this idea, whether it be, we sold ourselves or really what I think it is, we've been sold from the outside world that we got to constantly eat something new. That idea of novelty, like,
right.
Hey, if I eat steak and potatoes on Monday, I can't eat it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday or Friday. And I think that's just like a poor way to go about it because what do you get? That means every single day you're going to be trying to eat something different or some variation. It's like that's a lot of logistics. New grocery list every day. Like, you're spending more time trying to cook and figure it out and da-da-da-da-da. So OSOM, really what it says is instead of eating something different every single day or even, meals that you'll just repeat for weeks and months on end before you change it. And again, this is part of the reason why I'm a men's coach and not women. I know way too many women that just can't handle that. They need the variety, but for men, we can do that. And I think when you tap into that, you remove the bullshit of the novelty and eating something different every day and lean on that habitual side of us. You can find a meal plan that really works for you and just lock that in for a month, 2 months, in my case, literally years at a time, and you don't have to think about it.
Right.
So imagine going from making a decision 3 times a day on what to eat times 365. How many decisions is that you're making? And then you slash that down from making one decision one time about what you're going to eat for a day.
Yeah.
And you can do that maybe if you if you want to go to the extreme like me, a year, even if it's a month, that slashes so much decision making around what to eat, right? So that's the first thing. And the second part is the meal prep, just either having a chef to do that or doing it yourself, but just doing it in batches where, hey, every Sunday, or again, if you have a chef, just, once or twice a week, just have them or have yourself, just meal prep everything for the entire week and then just rinse and repeat, which removes all of the time that throughout the week when you're actually working that you need to actually have the food ready.
Right.
So there's a few things. The other thing would be grocery shopping. Again, the easiest thing to do is understand exactly what you need for the week and how much quantity you need for everything and just ordering it at one shot and not even going to the grocery store, but using an app like Instacart and actually having all of the food just show up at your front door. So now you're eliminating the grocery shopping. You're eliminating the day-to-day cooking because it's all meal prepped. You literally just need to reheat it in most cases. If you're making a smoothie, it takes 5 minutes, right? And now you've just eliminated 90% of the work and all you got to do is eat it. Whether you're eating it from Uber Eats or your own kitchen, you still got to eat the food. And so the biggest part of it is just having the food actually available for you.
So that's nutrition and like a massive part of like getting in shape. And we talked about the fitness. What is another low hanging fruit, I guess, that sticks out to you among when you're working with very high value guys?
I would say sleep is another one. You can get away with not sleeping a proper amount for some time, but it's going to catch up to you and there's going to be cycles, right? Like the longer you let yourself not have proper rest, the likelihood that you're going to hit something called like baseline resetting, where if you underslept for like a few hours and then you did that for a month at a time, you wouldn't actually know if you're undersleeping it. So like at a certain point, all of a sudden you're actually thinking you're fully rested, but you're not actually fully rested, but your body's kind of baseline resetted to that 6 hours versus that 8 hours. And so this is a dangerous thing. And so you can go about not sleeping a certain amount of, or like the proper amount of time for a while, but ultimately it's going to bite you in the ass. And if you were to just focus on sleeping that proper 8 hours, 8.5, depending on what it is for you, dude, the amount of energy and focus you get from that and consistency in your day-to-day performance just goes through the roof. And it's proven time and time again. So just like committing to sleeping more. Because again, if you think about it, say I sleep 6 hours and during those
Hours.
Sure, but you get more hours, right? So if my productivity is at 80%, but I get more hours, I'm just going to probably take longer to do the same amount of work, right? Because my productivity is lower.
Right.
But if you sleep the extra time, your mind's dialed in, you can focus better, you're not like getting distracted as easily, right? You can think clearer. You're sure getting those 2 extra hours taken off your day, but now all of a sudden when you are working, the decisions you're making is going to be better. You're going to be able to focus longer. You're going to have less cravings or impulses to go off and do things like check your phone, eat shitty food, etc. And so I think net you're way, but not to mention longevity. At a certain point, if you're on average sleeping 5 hours a night, your chances of getting cancer double. So like outside of the day to day, if we're talking longevity, then we really want to consider this as not only a factor today, but then also long term as well, right? So sleep's a huge one, and it's just sleeping the proper amount of time. Another one would just be moving the body. I don't care for you to go to the gym per se, even though that like weight training specifically and actually like hitting the weights is going to be great for muscle development, which leads into a boost in energy. But just moving the body, like going for walks, keeping the body active throughout the day is a huge way to keep our energy up, which a lot of guys just aren't doing, especially if they're at a desk all day.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff's just like simple things that you can do that I think we overlook, and we're just like, that's not worth it, right?
So me personally, but also like many business guys I talk to, brain fog and just like zoning out throughout the day, right? Saying that it all circles back to many of the things you just mentioned, like the sleep, the nutrition, the like being active, correct?
100%. So with brain fog, there's a few variables that are going to cause this. First one most likely is going to be nutrition. So eating the wrong things at the wrong time or eating too much of a certain food will cause brain fog. So we want to avoid a lot of foods that are going to be inflammatory to the system, and ultimately that's going to, if we don't, that's going to be one of the variables that could potentially be causing that brain fog. Second one's going to be sleep. So again, if we're undersleeping, we're going to feel fuzzy in the brain all day, and we just kind of can't shake that. Third one's going to be our phone. Okay. If we're constantly on our phone, and it's hard because in today's world, part of our life is, depending on the type of work you do, it's centered around our phone, answering calls, answering texts, answering emails. And it's all really like short, snappy, like frequent touches on our phone. And so it doesn't allow us to feel focused and give our brain the space to just lock in on one thing, like one really important thing for a prolonged period of time, right? There was a study done that as soon as you break your focus on something, it takes roughly 23 minutes to get back into like a focused state. So we're constantly breaking our focus to like pick up our phone, check a thing. We're always in this like shallow working mode. Yeah.
Sorry, 23 minutes?
Yeah.
So I know a strategy like to get a lot done. A few I've heard is like work 20 minutes or 30 minutes and take a 5-minute break, just like meditate or kind of like relax, not on your phone, then jump back into it. What do you have to say to that? Because like the productivity levels during those 30 minutes are like through the roof, and you kind of.
Yeah, if you're not distracted for that entire time, sure. But I think the and key thing is that if you were to do that, when you take the break, biggest key is not to go distract yourself with something that isn't what you're working on. So how you would want to operate on that is, say I'm working on a newsletter that I'm writing it. I take that 5-minute break. I'm like going out onto my balcony and just chilling. I'm not going on my phone, checking my phone in those 5 minutes and then going back to the newsletter. Like I'm doing nothing but just like resting. Like I'm literally like resting, taking an actual break from the work.
And that's the only way that would work.
Yeah, because anything else, like you're distracting the mind, right? Like you almost just want the mind just to take a break from thinking, but not switching the focus, you know? Because if you go 30 minutes and then go back, like you've switched your focus. But if you just take a rest, like literally just a rest from thinking, that is good. But as soon as you go and do something else, all of a sudden it's breaking focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So would you even recommend just stay dialed in once you get to that focus state and then just take a break whenever you need? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because this is where you get into like flow state and then you're like, do you want to break it, et cetera. So I think it's case by case, but I think that the way to stay most consistent is do 60 to 90 minutes of work and then take a 5-minute break. I found that to be the best. If you find yourself like teetering in terms of quality and like starting to zone off and whatnot, shorten that, especially on days where maybe you're tired, etc. But I would say like 60 to 90 minutes, 5-minute break, no phone in between, like just go take a break. You know, some things that I do is like I'll go do some push-ups, some pull-ups, like again, go sit out on my balcony, just get some sun exposure. But the phone, going back to the question about brain fog, the phone is going to be a huge proponent of that feeling of brain fog for sure. So food, sleep, phone, and the other one is just like stress. You know, like if we just say in the morning, first thing we do, we check our phone, right? We literally get up, check our phone, message from last night came in. It's like not good news or whatnot. Or it's like, you know, nothing, it's not like maybe like really bad news, but it's just not something that you wanted to hear, right? That then, if you don't deal with that emotional charge that just came up from like reading that message or whatever it was, if you don't deal with it right then and there, it kind of sits in the background, kind of like an app that's running in the background on your phone. And if you don't swipe that off or like remove it from your brain, it's just going to sit there. And it's just going to sit there and accumulate or burn up energy, keep you slightly off balance mentally. And if you go throughout your whole day without addressing that thing, that open loop that you created as soon as you checked your messages, that is going to cause your brain to not be in an optimal state. And then what happens? More and more of those open loops accumulate. Maybe it's not bad things. Maybe it's just like things you need to do. But if all of a sudden you're putting more and more stuff onto your brain, it's adding some sort of stress load on there, whether it's like stress in the sense of like I'm feeling stressed versus like actual just sheer amount of stuff that you feel like you need to do and you're keeping on your mind. Those are called like open loops, right?
So, and you mentioned that like when you're just starting your day, like that totally makes sense. You're stacking what you probably want to do is stack as many wins as you can and get good momentum going for your day. But running massive organizations, like you kind of have to deal with stress. And it's like how that's what you'll set you apart from your competition as well. Can you operate under a high load of stress? Like what is your advice to these CEOs or these big guys running organizations? Like what is it, like journaling or like what are solutions to be optimized when there's a bunch of shit being thrown at you?
I think the first thing is recognizing that you can manage stress, and what's stressful to one guy is not going to be stressful to another. Why is that? Because their stress management is different. Yeah. So when you look at that, it ultimately means that stress is subjective, right? Like, because if you think this thing's stressful, but then I don't, what's the difference there? Accepting it as something else. So it doesn't really matter about the actual thing itself, because that changes. It's your perspective of the thing. And then if you accept it as a stressful event, now it's like, how do you manage it once you've accepted it as stress? You with me so far? So once you're understanding of that, then it's like, cool. Either one, just don't even find it stressful. You know, that's step one. Let's just remove the idea of this is a stressful thing, because there's the flip side of this, that it's like, hey, this is actually something that's happening to me in a positive. Like, this is a great challenge for me to grow, right? There's the perspective shift. It's like, hey, poor me, I'm in this situation, this is tough, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And you're going to accept it as a stressful situation. Or it's like, dude, this is sick that I got to, deal with this challenge that's come up in my life. Now, all of a sudden, we're seeing this as completely different things. And this is where one guy sees it as like a really stressful situation. The other guy's like, this isn't stressful at all. So that's number one. Number two, the perspective is easily the quickest way to remove stress from our life. We just don't even let it in the first place, right? The second piece is when something inevitably does come in that is stressful, right? How do we manage it once we've accepted it as stress? And that's where like stress management comes in. And so from that, I call these kind of the big four. We have journaling, meditation, breath work, and gratitude. So journaling, this one is really case by case on how everyone does it. Obviously, we've been talking about that. And with journaling, it's really just like, hey, what's stressful? Like thinking in your mind, what is stressful right now? And writing it down. Hey, this thing is stressful. Hey, this conversation with so-and-so was really stressing me out. Great, that's step one. Like, what is stressing you out? Why is this stressful to you?
And I think what you said to me, like following the chain down to the anchor and like in your brain, just writing that down to get it out of there and clear it up, correct?
Bingo. So you just want to start following it. Like once you know what it is, why is it stressing you? Okay, well, why does that stress you? And then you just keep going until you find a point where it's like you feel like you've encapsulated the whole thing. And as soon as it's on paper, it becomes much easier to deal with because you're going to come to one of two conclusions. One, you're going to get clear on the action steps that you can take to resolve the stress. And you're like, cool, these are the things I need to do. Great. I know what I need to do to solve this. Or two, you're going to get to the conclusion that it's not actually that bad that I thought it was in my brain. And I don't actually have to worry, right? Now, how do we do that? That one's a little bit more subjective. The way I like to do that with this one is if it's not something that's maybe something I need to action on right away, but it's just something that's kind of like, hanging in the clouds a little bit and you're just like not sure what's going to happen, but there's no like really clear next step. Well, then it's looking at starting from the very bottom, like worst case scenario. Am I going to go broke from this? Probably not. Is my business going to fail from this? Well, probably not. Right. And you just like start with the absolute worst case scenarios and keep working backwards. Like if you have a partner, is my partner going to leave me over this? Is she going to break up with me? Probably not, and you just like all of these super irrational fears start to dissolve because our mind tends to go to worst case thinking. And so let's face those head on, ask them, are all of these things going to happen? No. All right, I'm going to be okay. Even if it's like, hey, I need to pay $20,000 for whatever thing. Shit, that might be a lot of money to you right now, but are you going to go broke? Could you, even if you went broke, could you find a way to make more money? It's working through these scenarios that like gets you out of the idea that the world's ending and into the place of like a healthy perspective on what this really is relative to the other, everything else going on in your life. So step one, just don't even allow the stress to be stress and switch that perspective. And then step two, if it does come in, you do find yourself stressed, how can we actually remove that stress using something like journaling, meditation, breath work, or celebrating or practicing gratitude as another way to put it. So
right on. Good. So we talked about like the why and the purpose like over the weekend. And I find many people can struggle with that. And I know you can relate as well. You mentioning it took you a while to figure out what your thing was. And once you found it, you got, you're dialed in and away you went. What do you recommend to people who were in your shoes and my shoes and that are struggling with the why and the purpose? And it's so important to find that and know what the bigger thing is. What is your advice to them to get there?
I would first say like remove the expectation that it needs to like come right away. I think looking back and now where I am, I think it's healthy to have an urgency because that will prompt questions and like prompt you to go out and search. But I think removing the expectation that I need to like find it right away or I need to have a why. Like if you feel like you're unsure on where you're at in life or like what the next step is, make your why finding that next step. Like don't be like, because I don't have it, like my life's a failure or like, I'm unmotivated or da. Like be in that mode of exploration. Be okay kind of being in chaos a little bit and kind of getting lost in different areas of life and trying things. And I think that's really important. If you do feel like you're unsure on what that bigger thing is that's going to allow you to feel fulfilled and force you to show up as that best, most dominant version of yourself, just go out and explore. Like, go try different things, meet different people, explore different industries, different, skill sets. And I think over time, the more reps you get at different things, you're just expanding your surface area of luck for finding it, So.
And is it once you find it that you'd recommend like dialing in on like your vision book you have, or like even scripting? Like, are you saying just dive right in there and spread yourself thin, and once you find it, then do the whole vision and scripting thing? Forget the how, like, or where do you say on the vision, like we spoke on this weekend, like where,
I still think it's important to have goals at any point. But like, again, the goal could be, hey, I want to find my why.
Right. And I'm going to do this, and this to find it.
Yeah. Like, and you're getting clear on like how you're going to feel when you find your why, right? Like, so it's not that you wouldn't have clarity on your life, but this is one step back. It's not like clarity on the thing, it's clarity on finding the thing.
Huh.
And just having that as your North Star. And your whole vision board in your book is like centered around exploration of the thing. And then once you find it, now it's like the next chapter, right? So I gives it in good shape, like, having, a certain lifestyle, like whether it's the cars, the houses, travel, the woman, like that stuff's things that we probably know more or less what we want versus like what we want to do for the rest of our life and how we want to show up and impact and da-da-da.
Right.
So those things you can still totally have, and those will be motivators to go out and find the why. So I still think it's important to, again, set the goals and get clear on what you're going to go and do. It's just going to change once you figure out what that next thing is that you're going to want to do long term.
Interesting. So a common theme over the whole weekend, being really hot, being really cold, and then it really sucked. You mind explaining the purpose of that? Like, why? What is that? What does it benefit? I'm not familiar.
Yeah, like we're talking just
saunas and cold plunge.
Yeah.
Like, why do people do that?
Yeah.
Is it before workouts? Is it after workouts? What of it?
If you were to do it in pairing with like physical activity, you would want to actually do it beforehand. If you were to actually do the cycles, yeah. Reason being is that it kind of acts like a warm up for the workout in a way, right? Like you feel really loose, really good, like good to go after you're doing those cycles. Actually, one of my buddies was doing kind of like a bit of a anecdotal experiment, and he did hot and cold before and then hot and cold after, and he actually, like, when he did it before versus after. So and there is similar like studies that reflect what he was talking about around the impacts that cold exposure specifically has on your muscles after a workout versus beforehand. Because what happens is when your body breaks down, you do a hard workout, what happens is your muscles break down, it goes into like an inflammation response, so it needs to repair itself. And actually putting cold in, exposing your muscles to cold right after a workout is actually stunting the recovery of your muscle. So to go and do like cold therapy or jump in a cold plunge right after workouts isn't actually that beneficial. Now on the flip side, the benefits of something like cold therapy and hot and cold cycles, like independently, they have their own benefits. And then together, they also like provide a different benefit. So saunas, great for many things, right? Again, great for detoxing, like the fact that you're sweating out so much. Swedish saunas, like the traditional, wood burning saunas, those sweat you out. But the new tech, infrared, actually, like both of them, again, cause you to sweat. It's going to be good for detoxification, but it heats you up from the inside out. And in doing so, it actually gives you a much deeper detox than like a wood burning. So, but either way, good for immune support, good for detoxification, also good for your skin. Yeah. And then on top of that, with the cold's good for a few things. I think the cold is great for discipline. Like, is it the only way to, build your discipline? No, but I think it's a great like tool for discipline. If you do a cold shower in the morning, if you do a cold plunge, like instantly you're forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do.
Right. And
when you do that, you're building self-trust, you're building self-control, and ultimately building discipline. Then you have things like the studies are kind of, they're not 100% on this, but around boosting your metabolism from doing cold plunge. So, upping your fat burning, using, brown protein, things like that, is going to also give you an immune response or recovery. So it increases your HRV. So there's a good amount of benefits on both sides separately. And then doing them together has a pretty unique effect on the body. Like, when you did it, or so you did the hot, then you went in the cold and you get out of the cold and you like have that like, woozy effect, right? Yeah. It's really pushing around your blood. So it's good for circulatory health. Again, all of them just really good for recovery and our immune system. So just giving ourselves a boost, exposing ourselves to those extremes, it gives our body a lot more resilience when it comes to our immune system. And so I think those modalities are just phenomenal to incorporate on a day-to-day basis. If you don't have access to them, like I don't right now, living in my condo, great. But getting out and doing that on a regular basis is a great modality for just like overall longevity.
So what do you have to say to those who are like thinking or looking to change and get a little bit more dialed in from a health perspective? And up until now, they've been just focused on the business, growing, pushing it forward. What do you have to say to those guys? Like, we've talked about the benefits, but what is like the first step for them?
In terms of first step, it's always going to be nutrition. For sure, hands down, nutrition. Now, there is like a prereq to that, is that you got to want it. Like we've kind of talked about the benefits, but I would go one step further and just really hammer home the idea that your body, you only have, let's put it this way to start. You have one body, that's it. You fuck it up, like you're instantly dropping the quality of life that you can experience. So if you're a business guy that has been grinding away, sacrificing his body to get the lifestyle, get the money to support his family or attract a family, right? In hopes of living this lifestyle or this certain life, well, you're instantly diminishing the quality of life that you're going to be able to have by having a poor body, a body that is filled with toxins, that has been broken down, that is filled with fat, like whatever that is dragging you down right now. Like you're literally lowering your quality of life, your ability to experience life for all it has, by not taking care of your health, simply put. So if you're a guy that's going into business to get a certain life and a lifestyle, you're going to sacrifice your body to get there. Well, when you get over there, you're literally losing a bit of, or a big chunk for certain guys, of what they could experience if their health isn't number one, right? So pre-frame is like, you got to want it and you got to understand what the consequences are if you don't prioritize it. I know way too many, 40, 50, 60-year-old business owners and just, humans in general that sacrifice their body, didn't take care of their body. And then when they actually have the ability to go and experience life, they're doing it at a lower level. And go ask all of them, hey, if you had to go back and actually prioritize your health, stay fit, keep good eating habits, keep good stress management habits, would you do it? How many of them are probably saying, yeah, it would? So pre-frames on the mindset piece, right? And just understanding the cause effect of you are literally cutting your ability to experience life at the fullest if you're not. And then you got to want it. And once you want it, then you can get into these steps. Number one's nutrition. By far, hands down, without a doubt, you got to get your nutrition dialed in. You got to have good eating habits and you got to have a good nutrition plan that's suited to you, your body, etc. Right? Like just cut. Especially if you're a business owner that has the money, like there's no excuse around timing and yada, yada. Like there's the tools, there's either hiring private chefs, there's meal prepping, there's ordering the groceries, like none of, there's no reason to not have your nutrition dialed in today's world. Like we have all the amenities and services to do so, but it's the most important thing. And it bleeds into every other part of our health, right? It's going to allow us to, again, not have brain fog, have higher energy levels, have a fit body, not get disease later on. So nutrition's number one, for sure. And how do you actually start eating whole foods? Stop eating the junk food, stop eating out, like just as close as nature intended is the easiest way to start it. Now, what you need to eat next time, that's a conversation that you got to have kind of like individually with, either someone like myself or, like a dietitian, et cetera. But nutrition's hands down number one. And I say nutrition and really just like working on your body in general, but nutrition really is kind of the gateway into the other areas of your health. Like once you start eating better and you start feeling better, you're like, oh, what else could I do? Now I'm going to go to the gym, and now I'm going to like start taking my sleep seriously, and I'm going to start now, like, taking my stress management seriously. Right. But it's kind of like the gateway to all of their steps. Nutrition's number one, hands down.
So like, what was it for you getting started? But like you were young, but like,
why was I doing it? Or
yeah, like so dialed in, like you're such an extreme of everything we're talking about. Like, why was it for you? Was there something deeper than just looking?
For sure, it was just wanting to look a certain way when I was younger. Like when I was 15, it was just like, hey, I want girls to look at me differently. I don't want to be picked on and known as like the skinny dude, and I want to have more confidence in myself, right? And that just really wasn't there when I had my skinny body. And, I felt like once I started to get into it, the other thing that kind of popped up is working out really activates that like masculine version of us that I don't think a lot of guys get in any other place. Like unless you're unless you're in a certain role in business or even a certain industry, I don't even think you get it in business in a lot of cases. You might get it in like small doses of, closing that deal or like making negotiation. Yeah. But day to day, I don't think there's a lot of that. And I think working out is one of the best anchors to activating that masculine, like that really like primal side of us. So once I started to work out, that became part of it. Is like, fuck, this thing's like activating a side of me that I couldn't activate before. I didn't even know existed. But when I first started, it was just that. It was like, I want to get the physique, etc. However, the reason I stayed working out specifically, once I started to get into more like sales, entrepreneurship, then it became a thing of, I have more energy. Right. I can focus better. I find I'm more disciplined. It's easier for me to get things done. And that was just so evident to me. Like the days that I would sleep in or stay up late, eat shitty food, be on my phone versus the days I wouldn't. I would work out, I'd eat clean, etc. Like night and day in terms of my outcomes in my business, in my sales performance, in my conversations, in my fluidity, in my mind. And in doing so, it's just like, it's a clear cut. It's like, I don't want to live any other way. Like I need to live this way if I'm going to maximize what I'm capable of. Right. And I think a lot of guys, what they're looking at are optimizing for dollars or optimizing for money, which is a good first step. But when you switch from optimizing for money versus optimizing for your full potential, now all of a sudden it becomes a much harder game to play without having your health a part of it. Because what happens is anyone can go fucking make money today, and an abundance of it running a business, whether it's a home service business, whether it's a digital business, whatever that is, like running a business and making money isn't all that difficult, right? Because there's so many people doing it. We have all the systems, right? So making money over time, after a couple of years in, it becomes a relatively easy game. And the longer you play it, the easier it is to continue to bring that money in. So you're not actually pushing yourself to your fullest. And so I would ask like, hey, if you're someone that's making, a couple $100,000 or, millions a year, do you feel like you're showing up as your best self for that business still? Or are you just looking good because you're making all this money? Because a lot of guys are just, because we compare and judge and evaluate individuals so highly on like how much money they're making, we don't actually look at the kind of man that they are versus who they could be. And when you ask yourself that, it's like, fuck the money. Am I actually showing up as that best version of myself? A lot of the time it's no when our health isn't dialed in, because it's almost impossible to do so.
And you touched on something similar that we're talking about this weekend, which I really liked, and more directed to those the younger men. Osmosis of surrounding yourself with the right people, getting out of the crowd that parties every weekend and doesn't take things seriously. What do you have to say to those guys 15, 16, 17 years old as a first step, whether it's moving out or a first step to get dialed in and really start taking things seriously?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's just like it's osmosis, it's proximity. It's like getting around the right people. And even if you don't have the luxury of being around them physically, it's getting around them digitally. That's one of the hugest hacks that our generation and every generation after us is going to have, is if you don't have access to those types of people that inspire you, that have the results that you want, you can now be in a relationship with them to some degree digitally, right? And this is part of the reason I'm starting Above Men Academy, which is a private men's community that gives them access to those types of people that they otherwise wouldn't have in their hometown or wherever they're living, their family, etc. And I think first things first is just find mentors that have what you want, be it in business, be it in health, relationships, right? Like if you're a guy that is going out and looking to get a girl and, start dating and find a girlfriend, like you should go find someone that has a girlfriend, right? And learn from them on what they did, especially if we're talking 15, 16, 17, like, dude, you're going to make so many mistakes that a lot of it's like, great, you're going to make it and then you're going to learn from it. But a lot of them, you're going to continue to make that mistake, especially in something like health and relationships, because you don't even know what you don't know. And so you're going to make the mistake not even knowing it's a mistake. You're like, why is no girl like me? Why do girls think I'm a creep? If we want to go down that road. And you could be in a much easier place to just say, hey, dude that has a girlfriend, how'd you get her? What things? And with the guy on the other side, you can see things a lot clearer, especially if it's a good teacher. And he's really understood the mechanics of what it means to attract a mate, hold a relationship, show up presentable. He can just nail these things super quick, right? So it's proximity, but then who you want to be close to is the people that have what you want and have been where you are. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And finding those people can either be in person or digitally. It's easier to do digitally, right? Jumping in communities like Above Men, reading books, following specific guys on Instagram or TikTok or whatever social media. And in doing so, you can start to lean into what they're saying and take action. But there's also another side of a bit of a dark side to it. It's like, just like you can follow the guy that has what you can also follow the guy that doesn't have what you want or has what you want but hasn't been where you are and is going to lead you astray down the wrong path, right? And again, this is where the internet is a bit of a distraction, right? Hey, I can follow a dude that, has the business that I want and yada, yada. And at the very same time, I can follow a half naked, OnlyFans girl, right? And so in doing so, all of a sudden it's like, shit, dude, I gotta be careful on what I'm looking digitally. And that's why I think the world is going to shift to more communities away from social media, and people are going to start spending more time in like localized communities specific on like one or two topics, because people are sick of getting thrown off and distracted, especially guys. Like, the Instagram algorithm or whatever, social media is like, they're just feeding all of this nonsense, gambling, video games, porn and half naked women, like all of these things are distractions. And in the midst of all that, there's like the mentor that you're looking for that's going to show you the path. So,
and the algorithms you mentioned, they're not helping you at all. At all.
No,
I don't want you to see that shit.
No, exactly, because that's going to keep you on there longer. So it's proximity. It's finding people that have what you want and have been where you are and are willing to help you to some degree. Again, whether that's just like a free, PDF, that's a book, whatever that is. It's finding those individuals to step on, especially when you're young like that. Don't try to go do it on your own. Just find those guys, learn, and then once you start learning, then you can start doing shit on your own. But I would say that's number one for sure. Well,
and to add to that, I think it's Hermosi who says that the ignorance debt, get as many of the eating shit and fuck ups and mistakes out of the way as you can. I think his example is, if you're wanting to make 10 million a year, why don't you just do it? Like, you don't know how to, you're ignorant to the fact of making it. So go out there and learn, but that's the debt you pay for not knowing that, right? Mm-hmm. The more mistakes and more lessons you can learn, the quicker you get further ahead. And I also want to preface that you're not just talking, you do all this shit. You moved out to BC when you were very young. You got away from your hometown. Why was that of like relating to what you're talking to of separating and surrounding yourself with the right people, chasing what you're wanting early on? Like, why?
Yeah, it wasn't like I went out there to maybe find or go and live closer to a mentor. But what I was doing was the flip of that, which was the distraction piece. Is like I was getting away from all the things that I knew were going to hold me down, right? Like, the guys in my hometown, they were fucking doing nothing. They were, abusing drugs. They were going to the club every weekend, even Thursday, Friday, whatever, right? And like, I knew if I hung out here, my mindset's going to be limited. My motivation's going to be limited. My discipline's going to be, down. The people I'm around are just going to continue to drain my energy. I'm probably going to end up with, a girl I'm not happy with, like all of these things. I'm just like, there's no fucking way. Like, I'm just not willing to accept that. And I knew I needed to make a radical shift, break free from that identity that I kind of like unconsciously built when I was younger through living with all those guys and being friends with all of them and being in that environment for so long. So the move to Vancouver was a clean slate. It was, okay, no one knows me here. I don't know anyone. I can really consciously create who I am and really find my path with no preset limitations. Now, of course, I had mental algorithms that I'd built from my hometown, which I had to like deprogram myself with, right? Like, again, the mindset thing where like we were having conversations with Aaron and, you know, all of a sudden he's speaking about, hey, instead of 1 million, why not 10? I was like, before I was thinking instead of 10, why not 100,000? But even that's so small, but why was I thinking so small? Because of the mentality I came from. So a lot of that was just like I had to clean slate, deprogram myself, put new, you know, mental programming in that was actually going to help me move forward. And it really pushes you. So outside of like getting away from the distractions, why I left my hometown and moved so far away was it forced myself to stay uncomfortable. And as a young dude, I think that's really good because it forces you to learn a lot about yourself. I was living by myself. You're confronted to like build a relationship with yourself. You're confronted to learn how to do the small things that just like gets you in that more like man role instead of that boy, you know, like you got to actually go figure out and like think outside of yourself. You got to think about the next day. You got to think about, okay, I need groceries. I need like supplies and da-da-da. So I think living on your own is extremely important, and doing it outside of your hometown builds a ton of essential habits for you as a boy going into a man. And those are kind of like part of the bridge to that. And I think that served me on a big way. I really have, especially as just showing up confidently, because I was, like I said, forced to build a relationship with myself, and then forced to like figure out those small habits that I don't think a lot of guys really build ever. And you can kind of tell, you know, they're all over the place. They're messy, not only in the mind, but physically. And it's part of it is like they're just a boy in a man's body, and they're just chasing, you know, butterflies almost, which is, you know, these like money goals. So yeah, those would probably be the two main reasons why I left.
And how old were you when you went out west?
I first moved out there when I was 19.
19. Wow.
Yeah.
Right on. Good. So you mentioned like chasing butterflies, which is like once you have the whole money thing figured out, it probably like it did take a while to get yourself to know where you want to be of your 5-year vision. It sounds like what has kept you from like the chasing squirrel syndrome of like being all over the map? And as entrepreneurs, there's always like shiny objects or new things, or you know, like what has kept you dialed in, and what's the importance of that opposed to starting 10 different fucking businesses?
I mean, dude, that was not always my case. Like, I've been all over the place up until recently. And like, I'm even, you know, with Above Men, I even have a few things that have been in my world before I started Above Men that I haven't fully like closed the loop on. Like, I invested in these freaking vending machines, and I was dealing with that. I was, you know, doing some marketing for a company that I'm still doing, you know, just like, you know, stuff. So it's like, I by no means, what I'm trying to say is like, by no means did I have that figured out from the get-go. Like, dude, I used to have all these things that I would try to lay hand at the same time. And dude, I was like, you know, if you looked into a dictionary and you looked up shiny object syndrome, like it would just say Cam Russelle, you know, and I've gotten a lot better at that, but it was hard. And I think the biggest shift was having my goal book. So having a vision board and a clear list of goals. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing. This is what's important to me. And anything that isn't that is a distraction, simply put. But if you don't have your goals set, then anytime something new comes up, it looks great because you don't know if that's going to take you further or closer to your goal, right? So for me, I have a goal book, has everything that I want to do, where I want to go, what I need to do, what I don't need to do, right? And now when things come up, I'm running it through. Like, I literally read this every day, every other day. And now anytime something new comes up, I'm running through my mind, is this going to take me further or closer to my goal? And 99% of the time it's further. You know, it's distraction. It's not actually aligned with my goals. And so having that clarity of my goals it's by far the number one way to stay focused, is having clarity on your goals. Because the moment you lose focus of your goal, it gives a window of opportunity for something else to become your goal. When in reality, that's probably actually not your goal, but it's like, oh, this seems, cool. Let me go do this thing. Right.
Right.
So it's just maintaining clear. First of all, having goals. Number one, you got to have a goal. Like whatever that is, just have a fucking goal. And then once you have the goal, don't lose sight of the goal. And for every minute you've lost sight of the goal is a minute that is up for grabs for a distraction.
So, and I'm sure it's a transparent line of like new opportunities, and like if it's an amazing opportunity, like, where do you draw the line between kind of switching things up a little bit?
Well, I mean, that's a really case by case thing, I would say. But I think if the current thing you're going after becomes no longer important to you or feels aligned to your larger mission, I think finding something else to replace it with, whether that comes up naturally and you're kind of like poised, it's like, oh shit, do I like this better than this?
But still gets you to...
Yeah, because there's going to be many vehicles to get you to a goal, right? Especially if it's something like a money goal. Like I think that's where shiny object syndrome just like runs rampant. It's like, hey, I want to make $1 million. Great. Well, there's literally endless ways you could make $1 million. So if you're on the path of e-com and you're, starting an online business, et cetera, selling products, that could get you to the $1 million. But then all of a sudden a service-based business comes up and you're like, oh, maybe I'm going to do the service-based business. You can also get to the $1 million. So I think it's really tough to answer that. And especially for the person, because it's so context dependent, where this is why I think having a mission-oriented goal is really powerful, because it all of a sudden like slims things down of what's possible. Like there's a certain vehicle that typically that will typically solve that. Like instead of making a certain amount of money, it's creating a certain amount of impact. And met that impact, okay, well now there's probably not as many
like distractions.
Yeah, not as many vehicles to go and do that, like to go and solve for like a mission oriented goal versus like a money oriented goal. And then if you want to go one step further, there's an exercise called Ikigai. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So it's this Japanese like concept that basically gives purpose to life. And there's 4 circles that all overlap, and in the middle, that's your Ikigai. So it's, what are you good at? What can you get paid for? What does the world need? And what are you good at? What does the world need? And what do you love? Okay. If you were to answer those 4, there's going to be an overlap of all 4. And at some point, it's going to get clear. So another way to decipher from this thing to this thing is going and doing an exercise like Ikigai and getting really clear on, hey, if something comes up, is like, do I love it? Does the world need it? Could I get paid doing the thing? And am I good at it? And if you were to answer those and all of them came up green, great. Maybe that is a thing to switch it. But a lot of the time you're going to answer all of them like, actually, I probably wouldn't love it. I'm really bad at this thing. I could make a ton of money. I bet you I could make an impact, but it just doesn't solve it. So for me, like with Above Men, I'd check all of those boxes. I can get paid. The world definitely needs it. I would say I'm pretty good at it. And I can. What was the last one? I really love doing it. Like absolutely love doing it. And so the Ikigai is a good like filter, but the principle under that is like give yourself a list of like key parameters that you need to check for with a business or like a vehicle towards achieving a goal, if that makes sense.
So yeah, that was good. So I'm curious, a standard that when you moved out west, like what was one that stuck out when you're really trying to redefine yourself, whether it was with yourself or standard you held the people you're hanging out with when you were starting to develop new, whether it's friend groups or people that you talk to and hang out with regularly? Like what's a standard you I guess live by?
That's definitely changed as I've grown. But one of the very first things you said to me when you came to the retreat was, I want to be the dumbest guy in the room, right? And like I've been trying to do that myself in certain lights. That's why I want to hang around with guys like Aaron Spivak and the people that he's connecting me with, and just continuing to expand into higher and higher like groups of individuals, I think is just like a good base point. Is like, am I continuing to find myself in bigger and bigger rooms? And I think there's ultimately pull back and look at there really is 3 relationships that I want to have. There's someone that's ahead of me, someone that's on my level, and someone that's below me. I don't say below me, I should say behind me. Like they're not as far ahead as me. And so I'm constantly looking for those three relationships. And there's a good balance between the three. Like I want to meet as many guys ahead of me as possible. I only really need a handful of guys that are, at my level that we can kind of support each other. And then because of the nature of my business, I also want to be around as many guys that are below me that I can help bring up, right? Raise or further behind me. And so I'm constantly looking like, what bucket does this person, if I meet someone new, like what bucket, do you fit in? Like for you, for example, I'm just like, hey dude, I know I could totally help you out with your physique and your health and your energy, et cetera. Right. So I'm like, great, I could get value from with this relationship. Right. So I think it's where are they in those buckets? And this middle one's the real key, right? Like if someone's ahead of me, one of the things I would look at is, are they ahead of me in something that I actually want to do? And it's like, cool, you can have a bunch of money, but if you got it from, I don't know, mining coal, it's like, I'm sorry, dude. I'm sure there's a ton of like business principles you have, but in terms of, how you made your money, I never plan on making my money from mining coal.
Really?
So it's a bit of like, how aligned would they be? Like someone like Aaron, he made his money from ecom. That's close enough that it's like, cool, I could actually see myself, learning a lot from him, not only from his specific skill set on how he made money, but then also just like the business principles in the digital world. So when I'm looking ahead, it's, again, where did they come from and how did they, make their success? And is that success aligned with what I got going on? The people aligned with me, like kind of at my same level that we're kind of like, seeing eye to eye. It's like, are you going to push me and are you going to support me in the same way that I would want to, or that I would support you? Because I really only need a handful of guys. So I really just want like a couple of guys that are just going to be completely honest, really call me out of my bullshit, be there to support me, hold me accountable. And you only need like 3, maybe 5 guys of those individuals, right? And so those, whether they're in the same business, they're completely different. It's more about like the relationship itself for those type of individuals. And then the people below me is just like, I want as many of those relationships as I can, given the nature of my business. But the biggest thing is, can I actually help them? 10 steps behind me in money. Well, it's like, I'm not here to educate you on how to make money right now. But if you're looking for help in your health, relationships, what it means to be a man, like, great. Right. I can help you out with that. So yeah. Did that answer that?
Yeah, that was good. So before we wrap this up, above men, what's the next steps? What's next? And now it sounds like you've got your key 4 things that you take men through to help them become more of a man. Like what's next on the docket?
Yeah, man, it's launching Above Men Academy, which I'm doing that today. So moving from a higher ticket to a lower ticket to make it really accessible to as many guys as possible, and really building a community, right? Like I think there's so much power in community, and more, especially the more intense our worlds are digitally. Like I should rephrase that. The more our world is digitally, the more community really matters, because I think social media has created such a parasocial relationship. Like I have a relationship with you, but then you have a different relationship with me because it's, online, and like you can see my profile, I can see yours, but it's different. Right. Like that is completely different than a community where all the people are inside and we're all interacting with each other in this like, kind of container for the same reason, right? Like, hey, we all want to get better, right? And we're all here to get better. And I think that is what's going to really take Above Men farthest to our mission, which is, helping 1 million men fulfill their full potential and lead their tribe. And so starting with the community, it's learning how to build a really engaged community that, loves to hang out with each other, loves to support each other, actually has impact, can create change within the individuals. So just building that, like I'm really honing in on how to build a community like that. There's certain skills there, just like sales,
like opposed to just a course. Like you really want to emphasize on the community aspect.
100%. I think from a business standpoint, there's a huge moat in building a community. You can take all my, go into my community, take all my content, but you can't take a community away from someone. Like that's just such a unique one-of-one aspect of business that I think is going to be my sticky factor. It's going to be my moat. It's going to be my unique value proposition. And so building it for the sake of the mission. Like, again, if you had 10,000 guys that are all on the same page of how to live from a health standpoint, nutrition, movement, mindset, like there's a lot of power in that, like people start to move in the same way. Like you've seen it time and time again, right? Like whether it's like actual cults, like they literally all do the same thing and they can be powerful, right? So it's the community building. It's figuring out literally how to build a cult, in a positive way that is going to get closer to that end goal of, helping 1 million men realize their full potential. So
that's awesome. Awesome. Listen, I can't wait to see where things go with Above Men. Like even just since the beginning of the year, it's been crazy to see how far you guys have come. Where can people find you, whether they're interested or just to check out the socials? Where
Yep, it would be Instagram would be the main place, which is just Cam Russell, Russelle. And then on top of that, if you want, you can go check out typically I try to drop a newsletter once a week, which is aboveclub.co/memos. And I mainly talk everything to do with men's health, masculinity, dating and relationships, etc.
That's awesome. Cam, thanks again. I appreciate the chat.
Of course, brother. Been great.